sit here.
Great. So welcome again to our panel. I think we've met everybody except for Dr. Walia, who's joined us from a late flight. So welcome, Dr. Walia. He has a long-standing interest in gene therapy development for neurogenetic conditions. Some of the advanced programs from his lab include AAV9-based gene therapies for GM2 gangliosidosis, including ultra-rare GM2AB variant and 3 creatinine deficiency disorders. And he has founded a biotech company called Gencorrex Therapies. So welcome, Dr. Walia.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about IND. So we kicked off tonight's session with a talk from Su Ling talking about the CRO aspects of setting up IITs in China. And then Audrey talked more about the FDA and potential to transition those IITs to the US FDA. And then Jin talked more about how that links back to a CRO that you might choose and choosing the right partner in order to scale your therapies through CMC. So I guess my first question around this, if you could all kind of maybe start, and maybe we'll start with Audrey here since you're the first person here on my left. Maybe give us an example of a customer or a project that you've done in your past or recently where you really experienced like the IIT either from an industry-sponsored or a patient-only story. If you have an experience like that you can share with the audience.
Can you hear me? Okay, so I do have experience that. So it was autologous CAR T that for oncology. And then, you know, we never rehearse, so suddenly the question, a lot of time people ask finally which one you answer, but it's good. So I remember that was an autologous CAR T, and they actually conducted in China for for I forgot what tumor. It seemed like it's not a solid tumor, but anyway, so B-cell lymphoma or something. But then it was actually, they have the Chinese data from a hospital. It was from an investigator. And then the company acquired license out and want to apply for the US IND and want to take advantage of those data. So what we did is that, first of all, that was pretty much after 2017 that China already joined it, ICH. So they follow the ICH E6 and GCP, et cetera. And then, so we did a gap assessment as usual, and we checked for their study report, individual study report, their safety summary, and whether there's any efficacy at this early stage. And we provided a regulatory strategy telling them from this data, we can try to go for US phase 1B. Instead, it started with a phase 1A, and we can advance certain doses that we don't have to repeat that. That's one case. A second case is that there was a foreign data of a clinical that they actually want to co-apply to their own country as well as to the US, like parallelly. In that way, how do we not doing repetitive work or dosing in both countries? So that was a little bit challenging in the way that they want to apply for 2 countries, a regulatory body, parallelly going for the clinical study, want to save time on certain doses without, or skipping certain doses based on actually the other country was China. They are very fast than the US one. So we were able to cross-reference that clinical data to support that skipping several of the doses, early doses, go to next advanced dose and continue the clinical study. So that's pretty much my 2 examples.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Great experience. And Jim?
I would say because as a CDMO company, we have seen a lot of requests of doing the IIT trial in China. And some of them, they even consider the IND after IIT. The requests sometimes are pretty different. You know, some is really from beginning to the end. But the recent case is they just ask, say, okay, can we ship the DS material to you? You do the DP fill for us, and then do the IIT trial in China. Now, definitely a lot of cases related to the mRNA TLNP. We certainly started to see the increase of LVV for in vivo CAR T.
Dr. Walia?
So I'm a physician scientist from Canada. I work on developing gene therapies for almost 9 diseases, all rare, ultra-rare neurogenetic conditions. So when I developed one rare, ultra-rare genetic condition gene therapy, there were patients from China who approached me that can I help them? So as a compassionate use, we help them. So far, I think the second patient is going to be treated very soon for a very rare condition, GM2AB variant. And this is a success story because it's difficult to get those patients. They are very, very rare, first of all. So more population, maybe that's why patients are more detected in India and China. I have seen patients here as well, 3 patients. And actually, because of my research interest from all around the world, most of these patients come to me anyway. But when the request came, we worked with companies, and then we generated the viral vector. We stabilized one patient in his disease. So that was very successful. Going through IIT has been a successful story because how fast we went in China through IIT to inject that first N=1 was really something which I could have not achieved in Canada or maybe in US as well. So I would say IIT process in China is really good, and we are using the same process for the second patient as well. And then from there onwards, I think that we will be, because first in human gene therapy is already done now, so that data can be used for some trials here in Canada and US. So wonderful experience so far.
Yeah, when a patient comes to you with a family illness, then that's really, really close to my heart at least, and makes a real difference in people's lives.
Yes.
And makes what we do really worthwhile, doesn't it? Suli?
Yeah, I want to give an example of one of our US clients. They are applying for IND with the FDA while conducting this IIT in China, because they think they will get safety data much sooner in China, and they can use that to support their IND approval in the US. And we have been talking with a lot of clients from US, Europe. There's a strong interest of international companies conducting studies in China now. And I just want to summarize the trend is that there are hematology is still the #1 area. Then it goes to autoimmune. Now there are increased interest in autoimmune diseases, but I have to say rheumatologists, they are very cautious. So if any of you are interested in doing IIT in rheumatology, you are going to face a lot of questions from the rheumatologist. They are going to have high requirements about the safety profile of your drug. So it's hematology, autoimmune, and also a lot of discussions or talks with the PIs in the neurology area in China now. And ophthalmology, well, yeah, there are a few studies in ophthalmology also, and certainly a lot of interest in rare diseases in China because the enrollment rate is so fast.
Fantastic. So speaking about IITs in China, we talked a lot about the 818 decree, and I know that there's been a lot of questions around the impact that that is going to have on the changes, since it's only like 1 week ago that the 818 decree came about. Could you speak to exactly what that's going to mean for somebody who's applying for IIT now versus if they had applied like last year? And then what is that impact going to mean from their trial design, their dose design, and so on? And maybe we can start with Su Ling, since that was part of your presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, sure, no problem. As I mentioned in my talk before, for those studies conducted at the top sites, there's not much change in terms of the site approval requirements or timeline, because those top sites were already having very high requirements about the safety and preclinical data, CMC data. But we do see that before the Decree 818, there were some studies done at smaller sites, and those smaller sites were much more flexible with the preclinical data requirements. Now that path is very difficult now. Now it clearly says, the Decree 818 clearly says it has to be done with a tertiary level hospital and A-level hospitals, and preferably a hospital with a national key discipline related to that indication you are interested in.
Yeah, that's really interesting from a clinical trial perspective. But what about CMC perspective? How is IIT going to impact a client from a CMC perspective if they want to go to IND afterwards?
I think absolutely. Really, it's personally, I feel 818 is good for the patient. It's good for the industry. Because when we think about a drug, right, you want to make sure it's safe. You can pretty much relatively consistent, at least, to make the product. And then if something happens, you have enough documentation to trace back to help you find out what could be the potential cause. And from a CMC standpoint, I feel that this is kind of give the more clear guidance for the industry of conducting, of making the material and provide it to the patient. If we think about the IND, you need a full CMC guidance, full GMP compliance. But from the IIT, at least you need the GMP-like. But before, it was not clear. I feel right now it's more standardized and more consistent. I feel it's beneficial to the clients and to the patients, and also beneficial for the industry to really leverage the good thing about IIT. Don't abuse using the IIT.
Do IITs require GMP conditions? You said GMP-like. What is the difference?
My understanding is you need to follow the GMP, at least follow the GMP principle. That's we call it GMP-like, right? You need one. I think a simple example is, my understanding is, if you could use your engineering raw material, under a GMP environment for your IIT study, but of course you need to meet all the raw material, documentation, release, all the things. But you don't have to say you have a GMP run for your IIT. However, there are companies, they want to use the same material from your GMP run for IIT study first, and then later on you can have an easy transition from IIT to IND.
Mm-hmm. So you don't need a fully validated process, but you use all the GMP conditions.
Right.
Okay, got it. So Su-Ling, coming to you with your experience in FDA, could you tell us how does IIT help abbreviate your path to clinic? Does it save time? If you did an IIT and then moved to IND, what does that process look like in your experience?
Yeah, I think it really depends on how the sponsor did the IIT, and then it could help with, for example, if the novel products, the IIT result could support for the safety part that couldn't address or will not be sufficiently addressed by the non-clinical study. And also it helped to justify the starting dose going to the next step of a clinical study. And if it is a rare disease, if you get a rare disease designation, which you really don't have to wait until you apply for IND. You can start that application anytime during the pre-IND or even your start the drug development R&D. So that entitle you to enroll patients globally. So you could consider, because it's rare, I was talking to people, how long it's gonna take you to enroll if you just only concentrate on the US. So FDA recognize that and encourage you to enroll that into many different regions and countries. And we can see if you follow the same protocol has been proved here in FDA, and then you can compile all the data to support the marketing application. So it's really case by case, but definitely I would say it's supportive to have that data. It's beneficial. It just depends on how much beneficial or valuable, depend on the purpose.
Yeah. So it doesn't replace all the studies you need to do.
It wouldn't replace.
Right.
It wouldn't replace. It's really, I would say if you want to support a phase 1B from your IIT versus you want to support a phase 2 or phase 3, that's have a higher bar. It make your IIT more scrutinized. Why? How did you do that?
Suling, you probably have some experiences in that area too. What is your perspective?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Audrey said. If you want to use your IIT data to support your future IND application, especially if you want to skip some of the work, say even phase 1 study, definitely your study design should be very rigorous. And also the conduct of the study should strictly follow the GCP guideline. And ideally, you should do this study with the site that has experience with at least NMPA inspections, so you are confident in their quality and the SOP system.
Fantastic. And we mentioned rare disease earlier, so just coming back to you, Dr. Walia, you worked a lot on rare diseases. How many programs and at what stage are they, and what experience have you had with IITs there?
Yeah, I've been working as I mentioned before, for 9 diseases. One of the programs is already in clinical stage, where we have injected 3 patients here in Canada. That's for GM2, that involves 2 diseases, Tay-Sachs and Sandhoff disease. So we made the GMP product. So just to add to what Jin said, GMP-like is allowed here in also North America, where they are less stringent to be GMP. So the GMP material has to go once it is in higher phases of trial or when the product is approved. But for phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials, the FDA or Health Canada is okay for GMP-like product as well. So if there is GMP-like product getting used in IIT, that data can be used very easily in IND submissions as well. We have used a GMP-like material already in GM2, gangliosidosis here, but similar material was used for GM2 activator protein deficiency, the GM2AB variant in China as well. So both are equivalent. But what we found was that if we are working with patients and not involving a company there, it's sometimes very hard for single patients to follow on their tests and get it recorded somewhere. So I think it's a good idea always to work with a company which can help you with tracing and tracking all the tests and following the protocol.
Do you have experiences of clients who transition from IIT and to IND, and what are the pitfalls to avoid in that process? Jin.
My suggestion really is that when you do your IIT, you need to consider your IND later. You need to bridge it. And of course, one way I would suggest is you need to think about it this way: is okay, you are doing the IIT, your IND is coming next. Although you are waiting for some data, right, to trigger that, because we know the clinical trial is much more expensive than IIT trial. That's I would suggest. there are certainly clients, they transfer the process from one place to another place. They did the IIT. We saw that, that it's not a different process. Right? I would say the bottom line is you want to avoid significant process change, especially from IIT to IND, and also you want to find a way to bridge the data. Product quality data. You want to make sure your product quality is, especially critical product quality, is not changed from IIT to IND. So that's, I think that's my answer.
Mm-hmm. So coming back to you, Audrey, kind of connected to the CMC process, what is the biggest disconnect between academic trial design and then the actual regulatory expectations? What have you seen have been the biggest pitfalls?
I think mainly it's about the understanding of criteria of FDA requirement. For example, for donor screening, the donor screening has a standard. FDA will ask, what is the medical record about the donor? What did you screen based on what criteria? Did you screen for those commonly seen contagious communicable the virus or microbes in your region when you bring a foreign donor? And did you use a lab of a clear? Did you use FDA-approved kit? There are a lot of questions that you want to take it into consideration when you bring a trial to a foreign region that it's not easily to access to U.S. cleared kits, U.S. cleared lab, So that's something take into consideration how to safeguard that. You may not have IRB, this terminology in a foreign country, but you will have an ethical committee that's equivalent that you want to place in advance. So there are a lot of things you want to know in advance that you need to prepare. If you want the data generated from it become valuable, actually can use that to support the US and make it more meaningful and trustable, accountable by FDA. They will ask you, what method, why we would accept this result? You have to show the method is qualified. Mm-hmm. So it's sensitive, it's accurate, it's specific. So cell gene therapy is not like a small molecule or antibody. They are more individualized and they are more complicated. So a lot of time, even for GMP-like, you still have to have traceability. You still have to ensure the no advantageous agent with, if you use 293 cells, anything to generate the vectors, viral vector, you have to ensure they are free of all those human contagious virals, in vitro, in vivo, and others. So, and including West Niles, if it's applicable, and there are many things requirement for that, and the TSE, BSE, etc. So I would say keep everything in mind when you draw that picture before you actually make your decision to jump into it.
Fantastic, thank you. So Dr. Walia, your patients are paying for their own therapies. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences, how that works, and where do the patients move on? What are the biggest pitfalls and challenges with that?
Well, for ultra-rare diseases, that's where the issue is that sometimes the industry is not very much interested because we don't know that the commercialization benefit is going to be there or not. So for those diseases which have not been picked up by industry, many families are coming forward trying to put money from their own pocket or raising funds from philanthropy, and contacting many companies like ProBio and saying, can you help us? And these companies are moving forward, helping these families to get their children treated. So it is a wonderful experience because there are many stakeholders which are working together to help the most important piece of the whole thing, that's the patient. So if we are all working towards patient-oriented research or patient-oriented development, it is going to work somehow. So yeah. It was good.
Fantastic. Su-Ling, you have probably quite a wide range of clients as a CRO. Could you tell us all the different types of clients and how they differ in terms of their strategy in using IIT and how that's leveraged for IND?
Yes, we do have a few big company, not big pharma company, but they are established public companies, CGT companies in the US and Europe want to do IITs in China. They usually already have very solid preclinical data and have done a lot of animal testing and have years of experience and research on that particular asset. So it's much easier for them to get approval at the site and win the trust of the PI. And usually they have a large medical team also with the protocol, everything fully developed. They usually just look for the feedback from the PI in terms of the standard of care in China, what is this PI's preference in terms of a certain aspect of the protocol. But usually they do not need much help from us from the site. They just need us to execute the study. But we also work with a lot of smaller biotechs. With these smaller biotechs, they usually do not have enough preclinical data yet. We usually connect them with the site, with the PI, and the site and the PI will tell them what additional study they need to do. And also, most of the smaller biotechs we work with at the beginning, they only have a protocol synopsis or high-level study design. And our medical team will work with the PI, actually help them to develop the protocol. So we see that big companies, smaller companies, they have a huge gap in terms of resources, in terms of how they want to get the study done. Well, biotech needs smaller biotech needs a lot of help and guidance. But big companies, they are very clear how they want to do it, where they want to do it, and the timeline is very clear. They set very firm goals for the timeline. But smaller biotechs, they are much more flexible.
I think I'm going to pause here just briefly to see if there's any questions from the audience. If anybody has any questions, yes, please.
I have two questions. I mean, it's like I said, they're a little disparate. Maybe a little bit more definition. And I know because it's like maybe not to be a purist, but it just feels some angst. You can't be a little pregnant. You'll have to be either pregnant or not pregnant. So what do you mean by GMP-like? Having an angst because I've worked in the regulated industry for about 20 plus years. If someone can give me a definition what that means, I can completely understand development, engineering lot with well different backgrounds. That's not GMP-like, but that's the definition that you give for it. This is say a GMP batch that I'm producing. So I would love to have that definition, at least outlined, and then I can address my.
Okay, yeah.
I can address
Go ahead.
it. So FDA does have a guidance, phase appropriate GMP.
Completely.
Yeah.
The phase appropriate listing doesn't say GMP-like.
Yes, so there's people kind of use that as a way of saying that norm, GMP-like. That means I'm not a fully GMP. So fully GMP is starting in regulation phase 2. So when you begin phase 2, you have to be strict GMP. So phase 1 and the IIT before phase 2, people sometimes use that word in industry, GMP-like. So how can you meet this requirement, the GMP-like? You still have to have a quality system. Okay, so that to ensure that you have the quality system that to make sure your deviation, your OS, your human, your equipment, your environment, everything doesn't cause safety issue because the early phase is not really, the main goal is not to prove the efficacy. The early phase, everything is about safety. FDA care about safety. If you want to pass the IND, you just make sure it's safe because your protocol is not reflecting, I'm going to make sure I'm going to see efficacy here. That's the purpose of an early phase. So safety is your goal. So you're back thinking about what's your GMP like to ensure the safety. Okay, the human need to be trained when they process the cell. right? The operator need to be trained. And the result need to be analytically, they need to be qualified. And then everything, the temperature, the stability, the release, the controlling of the in-process control, to certain point, they don't have to be validated. But they have to be qualified. The method, at least minimally, in-process control need to be scientifically sound. And the raw material is most importantly for a lot of cell gene therapy. They are from all different virus sources. So do you understand those sources, where they are coming from? Are they coming from the forbidden places? Like for example, are they coming from high mad cow, the serum, where did you get that, everything. So there are a lot of, WHO has guidance, FDA has guidance, EU has guidance, but for IIT, and also for cell gene traceability, like everything from beginning traceable to the end user, the patient itself. So I would say it's not a fully strict GMP requirement, but basically you need to have a quality system. And you still need control of your safety. Very importantly, contamination control, cross-contamination control, for example, for CDMO. Release of a quality to ensure the safety to the patient. Very importantly, everything is about safety.
So perfect. I completely get it because I've been in the regulatory industry. I've been in process development at many, many other stages. So that question basically bounces off to Jin. I still have my second question, but the lead off from there is, Jin, in your slide, you had put, like I said, IIT-to-IND in that bridge. You had talked about the process in China not being GMP and the migration towards GMP when you come towards an IND. And I would love to hear your thoughts, how you guys look at that bridging, because the reason is, especially related to what Su-Ling was saying about process and things. It's like I said, so I'm just trying to go back to where the basics lie. Because if you don't have defined raw materials, even if you don't have what I call as a GMP master viral seal, I may not be able to get to even an engineering log. So that's where I'm trying to define, is how those shifts occur. Well, I know that's belaboring this, but I just wanted to address it. So that way, Jen, I would love to hear your answer, but then I'll get my second question out because I see Millie being like I said, hurry up, hurry up.
It's okay. Great questions. We have all night.
Yeah, this is fairly important because we have process controls and all that, but then I would say doing IITs in China, great process, but I'm thinking about more broader about looking at cytochrome 450 pathways, and I would say metabolism pathways that are different between different racial and ethnic groups. And how does that correlate with varied populations, given some homogeneity in conducting trials in China versus conducting in the US or any other geography? Because that becomes important even for cell and gene therapy as with any other therapy. So I know I want to put that out there, but I would love to hear both answers.
Maybe you can go first, Jim.
Sure. This is a question I was asked myself many times. We say non-GMP, it's a relative concept, right? Even you look at the EU guidance, there's a GMP principle, right? Back to what Audrey mentioned, what I want to add, she mentioned the raw material, right? The raw material, you want to make sure you have the COAs, but whether you need to do the identity test in-house depends case by case, right? So that's less extensive. And the release assay. For IND, you have a full panel of release assays. And all the assays, probably you need to have them qualified. For IIT, you need to have I would say the important or critical assays. You need to have them, you measure them, you release the material. The assays, some of them, I don't remember what are them, you don't need to have them qualified, but not all of them, right? And then back to the process development, if you have a platform process, you run it. And for your IND, you probably you want to have a better understanding on your process. You need to do some optimization, define the set point, define the range, right? This is additional work. And then in terms of manufacturing, I mentioned that is for IND, typically we say, okay, it needs to be full GMP. You need to have a approved batch record. Anything derived from that batch record, this is a deviation. For IIT, you still need to conduct the manufacturing under the GMP environment, but you don't have to have approved batch record for your study. So there's something I can think about. Maybe Audrey can add more, but there are many things, right? There are 4 lists.
Yeah, so I have seen a lot of package from China. Their requirement actually to CDE is more stringent than we requirement to FDA for phase 1. So that part I don't worry much, but I think for foreign companies going to China, conduct the trial, you really have to have someone who knows, tell you in advance. You need to give the Chinese, they are capable of doing that, but you need to give them what I wanted, what you wanted. You need to tell them, I need to use this material that is a BSE, TSE free. Please make sure you have that statement. I need to ensure this environment monitored to what point. I need this to be done in a sterile environment for the cell processing. You have to bring up your requirement. That's, I think, in the early stage of a mutual discussion. What is customer expectation and what you're capable of doing? You're matching the need to each other with a, maybe regulatory consultant telling you what's the FDA requirement. Like I said, the IIT is not even a phase 1. When I say the phase 1 is a GMP, phase appropriate GMP, IIT is before that. So it's really depend on what you want. Like I said, if you want to use your IIT to support directly go to phase 3, that's really such a high bar. If you just want that IIT, you use maybe GLP material or GMP material, like I said, ensure it's safety. You have to test sterility. If anything go to human, you have to make sure it's sterile. No negotiation about this part. It have to be sterile, going to human being. Regardless, others, sterility, purity, and impurity control, right? So, and China attested that specific, we don't require in the US is that there's abnormal some tumor neurogeneity, something. Translated in Chinese is called 异常毒性. They always test that. That's more than what required in the US to make sure the product injected to the human will not cause abnormal toxicity or something. There's something specific for there. And then I have some conversation with their regulatory bodies called CDE. We had some discussion, training, and early stage. I asked them question. Why do you ask for this tuberculosis testing, which we never request that in the FDA tuberculosis testing? But they do a lot of more testing. And their viral testing for human cells, like 293, are equivalent, pretty much translated from ICH or from US guidance. Because I pretty much, in my opinion, they translate a lot of this ICH guidance as the Chinese additional requirement. That's become their guidance. So most of the package I see that is really need earlier engagement of you with your regulatory consultant and with your Chinese partner. Lay out your requirements, like depend on what kind of product. If it is autologous, versus it is the allogenic or heterogeneous, not autologous, they have totally different requirements. You have to tell them. And then that's your screening for your partner, right? If they are not capable of doing that, go for the next one.
Does that answer your question? Yeah. Another question?
My second question is, how do IITs in China address the lack of heterogeneity of metabolic pathways like cytochrome translate along a certain, I would say, maybe a metabolic pathway like liver metabolism, which would ensure, I mean, that's like, say, for example, how do you then translate it across geographies? If I want to test it, say, a North American population, or a European population, or an Australian population, or a South Asian population, just giving that, I would love to hear your thoughts related to transferability of the IIT that is conducted in China to, say, other geographies, especially related to that metabolism, because looking at the homogeneity of the population that's being evaluated.
Yeah, I think that's a very, should I answer that or you want to answer?
Sure, I can try. I'm a geneticist, so I know a little bit about genetics. So yes, there are variations in different racial populations about how things are metabolized. Different drugs are getting different metabolized. But if you see gene and cell therapy, you're talking about just capsid, and you're talking about those things. Is that, it's not a, are you focusing on gene and cell therapy, or are you focusing on small molecules?
No, I'm not focusing on small molecules. So just to give you that perspective, some gene and cell therapies also do get metabolized as tropism to the liver. And I would say because you definitely do have these enzymes that work in these metabolic pathways. And there are unique, like say, there is some things that are missing in, say, East Asian populations versus, say, North American population. There are some things that are present in East Asian population that are missing in North American population. Yeah. And I'm just trying to look at it because what that does is it impacts your PK
yes.
at the end of the day. And then that's like how much are you going to use and what's the utility and how the transfer of that data would be is for other populations. I get your point. I mean, the perfect point was IIT is not a phase 1. You will still need to do a well-fleshed-out phase 1 if I do geographies. I get that. I think that's your premise in that sense. It is just more to give a self-assurance if, like, say, it works. I mean, it's like, and then I can translate. I mean, I'm trying to read between the lines.
But,
and I just want to get a clear picture because while I would say there is a great advantage of speed, and I would say in, say, a year I can get some data that can definitely help me. Is it more of guiding, say, from investor perspective of trying to say like, hey, I have assurance in saying that would work, and then I can take it towards a fully fledged pathway. If that is so, I would love that.
That sounds like a great happy hour conversation, but I think we had another question over here. Yep.
So, you know, I did hear, it sounds like IIT is a very robust platform or model. What are some critical bottlenecks still existing, and as experts you would like to see to be improved or, you know, just make it more robust?
So I'm still thinking, I have an answer for him, but I'll answer you two first. So I think that's a very good question. It's really depend on, so a lot of people, when you really, like Su-Ling said, you gauge something, you got to go on site, like a informal audit, you go to check on that. Where's your computer system, you know? How do you ensure the confidentiality, everything, patient tracking record, you know, if there any changeable or any control, any archive, any backup. You talk to the people on site, you look at their medical record, what do you screen, you know? What item do you screen? So you got to have a way of a safeguard. So how do you know if you safeguard enough? You got to have someone maybe who knows that in that field to go with you to make sure. So she mentioned about the top tier hospitals, they are very experienced and credible. I totally agree with her. Those top tier, they accept tons of such kind of clinical trials that works very well. You're right, you need to avoid those potential gaps. In the very beginning, you need to check everything. You need to have a checklist in your mind. What I needed to make sure the medical record is sufficient, not missing anything, right? What I need is that the source of a material is recorded, and what I need is that to see if they are trained, and you know, to find out their credibility, their computer system, what do they use? You know, the data reporting out, can you easily transfer the data out, you know, as a raw representative, authentic data, everything, you know, the control of the whole system. So there are a lot of things you want to go audit on site, maybe with someone who knows that. I think that will be one very good one, and what they can reach out in terms of third-party support. For example, the material needed, if it's not in China, what are you gonna do? You know, and then from you, are they meet USP requirement? You know, so are you gonna ship there, or are they gonna have to find a way to buy it to China? So there are a lot of things. You draw the picture, you make up your checklist, you take this, go with you to see that places, whether you like it or not. So I think that will be very helpful. And very beginning, you find out everything if they meet your expectation or idea. But I have a question for that gentleman. He asked about this metabolic difference. So that's a very good question. That's why always, most of the case, FDA always require US represented population to get a pivotal study. So pivotal study, you always have to enroll US population as a represented population because you want to prove it in the US. Very rare, any company can totally rely on a foreign data, even that is from Australia, from Europe. That's not a US represented population. You know, US represented population, the white and then the black and the Mexican, they all are different ratio. They don't represent in Australia or Europe or China. So those IIT and that early stage, the main is safety. They, like I said, mostly they only support safety. They cannot make any full judgment to say effectiveness. So you still have to come to the US, especially to pivotal study, using US represented population. If it's a rare disease, I mentioned like a rare disease, you are entitled to enroll globally. Still, you have to agree with FDA how many patients you still have to enroll here, if possible, and compile the global population to make the decision of your efficacy. That's related to efficacy, you know, the PK, everything. You know, I see a lot of people doing clinical study, like they probably get a good data with this population, but because of a receptor sensitivity or mutation, very popular in certain races, then you got a totally wrong result.
So just addressing that, then what would be the ideal, I would say, patient sites, or I would say therapeutic sites that you would need for an IIT? Because then it definitely is like it's informative related to safety. It shows some proof of concept, some sort of mechanism that I can leverage. And is that, so is it like statistically derived, or is it just, I would say, and I would love to hear back from you because, like I said, I mean, as you're aware, FDA definitely has guidelines related to sites. And it's like, is that something that you see in IITs?
Yeah, you know, usually it's really dependent on the disease itself. So what I said is totally general. Generally, I would say less than 30 patients in the IIT size. Most of it, I talk about the US investigator from a university academic. In their size, probably just less than 30 for those kind of diseases. But I don't know in China, they enroll faster, you know, they have more population. They could maybe get more than 30 or even more, but that's what I generally see with the US investigator.
Thank you. Thank you for the great questions. Any other questions? We're almost into happy hour, so any last questions, or our panel is going to be available? Or, oh, yes.
So, we are in Boston, right? Helping for all biotechs. Small biotechs come up here and they grow. So, market is tight. Money is tight. You go out, the gas is $4.50, diesel prices are high, money is hard to come by. So what the panel would tell the small biotechs for your IND study or for your phase 1 study, GMP-like is okay. FDA will be okay. Don't spend money that is hard to come by. Save it. If you see good data, go to phase 2. Spend it. What would you tell them? Is that the right strategy in today's market? or I'm overstating the use of GMP?
Who wants to? Maybe we can take that question across all of the panel, starting with Su Ling, as a closing question on what advice would you give to companies who are strapped for cash and looking to spend it wisely?
Yeah, I'm not a CMC expert, but I can share you some of the experience, some of our clients' experience. We have a few US clients. What they did is they come to China to do clinical trials, but they really could not have enough fund to run a full global trial. So they form a partnership with the local China pharma company. And they license their interest of the assets in China to that local Chinese pharma company or biotech. And the Chinese company will pay for the part of the China trial part. And they can use the trial, it's a global study, but because part of the cost will be paid by the local partner. And it reduced the overall cost, and also it speed up the timeline of the study because of the large population in China, and also it reduced the number of patients they have to recruit in other countries. And we've seen a few cases done recently. And also in IIT, it's also done, some of the IITs are also done this way. It's a good way to capitalize on your resources in the most efficient way.
I will say that from academic perspective, I have seen in ultra-rare and rare disease where researchers have gone to FDA and they have said that we are going to make the vector in-house with this specification. Are you okay with that? And FDA has said yes. So GMP-like, GMP-qualified. So are those are all things acceptable to FDA. So if there's a small biotech, it's not a bad idea to have pre-IND meetings with FDA already, present to them that what kind of material you can make and what you're going to have in the phase 1 trial. And if they say, yes, this is all acceptable, you don't need to make GMP material, and you will save money. So just talk to the regulatory agencies first, bring them on board, get the trial done somewhere in IIT or somewhere else, and then you can come back for phase 2 trial here.
Over to you, Jim.
Sure. I think I mentioned that before, is that when you do your IIT, you need to take your IND later on, IND into consideration. So that's, I think, I would suggest a company do it. And then in terms of IIT, as I mentioned in my presentation slides, is you can have the first patient dosed quicker, right? And then the patient cost is smaller. And for startup companies, you start your IIT, you have the data, you could use the data to attract the new venture capitals. And I know some companies, you can look for license with the big pharma. These are the benefits before you really spend a lot of money. I see the benefit, but again, to the first point I made is keep your IND in mind. You don't want, okay, you have a good data from your IIT, and then later on you cannot bridge it to your IND. That would be a disaster.
I think if you're sensitive about this cost cautious, IT is optional, it's not must. So you probably have to plan with this amount of money. Where do you want to get? A lot of people, for them, from what I see my client, getting FDA IND safe to proceed is a milestone. They can attract more investment. Have shown good safety and a certain efficacy profile is another milestone, can attract more investment. So IIT, if, for example, something new, and you know you're going to encounter a lot of challenge, it's complicated. So in a way, it's really up to you. If you can get early good safety profile, shows individual patient healed, a good result, that's very promising, and you can attract more investor too. I did see people showing the cancer cell transform into the normal cell just in several patients in the hospital, and that attract immediately investment from someone. So it's beneficial, but it's your own pro and con risk. Not everyone is lucky. You probably throw money there. Didn't get any promising signal, but still you get a safety profile anyway, so.
Final question, go ahead.
Closure question. Does Biosecure Act have any interference with IIT use?
Biosecure Act for the manufacturer.
Using, CROs or, international, agencies. Is there any impact, short-term or long-term?
Yeah, so my client, if they get US government funding, they are very careful. Whatever they apply for the government funding for that product, they separate their accounting very clearly. That product use from government funding shouldn't mingle with sensitive part that they use that they know is sensitive, if that's for sure. I know my client, they separate very bad, but I don't think the early manufacturing is what you talk. I'm not sure about the Biosecure Act, the early, those manufacturing has anything to do. It's mainly talk about the commercial manufacturing, right? So like I said, those regulatory pathway I presented, the most recent two shows like they want local manufacturing, but they didn't say this local manufacturing cannot from which company. As long as it's local in the US, that's acceptable from at least those programs, the CNRV I presented, the STAR I presented, the new FDA program has one requirement. They don't have to go to a foreign inspection site for commercial approval. So it's talking about the commercial one if you have to enjoin that. But they also have other requirement. You agree to lower the cost of your marketed drug. So that's another requirement. So not many US companies really willing to commit it to do that, compare their high cost of all the clinical development. So there are always pros and cons. Even forget about there's any political thing. Just the program itself, you have to assess the pros and cons risk to yourself with your high cost, whether you can lower the cost of, et cetera. There are a lot of things I think more complicated. But I don't see issues with early development. People choose whatever convenient for them in terms of a cost, in terms of a quality, in terms of a speed going to the clinical. So that at least from my client, I don't see that many concern. It's only for those who get government and NIH funding. You have to clearly separate all the accounting and record everything you spend it on that government money.
Just to add to that, I think Biosecure Act probably started 2024, 2023. Yeah, but based on my knowledge, if you talk to the CDMOs in China, including us, when you look at the number of clients, that's US clients, the number is increasing, it's not decreasing.
That's true, yeah. That's true.
I think that's one thing I want to add.
Yeah.
The second thing I want to add is really, is for the novelty, the innovative work, right? I still strongly believe our human, we need more innovative drugs. Everybody need it. I don't think the Biosecure Act will affect this, right? Or change this, or change the direction. Yeah, that's what I want to add.
Yeah, I agree with what Ting said. I think no matter what size their company is, you are a global company. You want to capitalize the best advantages of each country to your benefits. So far from our BD experience, we've seen increased number of international clients despite all these geopolitical tensions. So I think the trend is here, no matter what, as long as China offers a certain advantage, people are attracted to it because you need to survive first, right? And talking about the cost benefit of China and also how to best utilize your limited funding, we've also see a trend that is combining China side with the Australian side. In our experience, some of our clients are combining because both countries offers unique advantages.
With that, I think we've taken longer for the panel than we expected, but really appreciate your engagement, and thank you very much to the panel. We can give them a round of applause. Thank you.